In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Incoming!
Welcome, everybody. This week on Omnic Lab, we actually have one of our retro guests, and I played the original intro for Omnic Lab. Not the one that we're currently using, the original one, the OG one that we used for the first year of the show. My name's Rob. I'm coming in all the way from a nice, spicy morning in Japan on a Sunday. And joining me in a nice Saturday evening, all the way up in Toronto regions, we have the one, the only, Great Root Beer, or Richard. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, I should say. How's it been?
Hello. It's been good. It's funny. I was thinking back to the first time I was on the show, and things had just gotten underway in New York, and I guess that was just over a year ago now. So it's pretty crazy what happens in a year.
Yeah, it really is. And this week on the show, we've actually added in, for those of you that haven't checked your descriptions or didn't click on a link to see what the title of the show is, this week is all about building Overwatch League fan clubs or support groups, as well as maybe some questions you might have and trying to build your own. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about a preview for Overwatch World Cup as we're getting into the voting season for the second stage of the voting for all of the different regions. So again, my name's Rob. We'll be referring to our guest as Great Root Beer, and Richard kind of across the show. So if you kind of get confused, the good news is we only have one guest this week, so you don't have to keep track of everyone's names. And the bad news is this week Andres is out, but the good news is that he's out with vacation for a change, which is much needed and much earned. Him and Kristen are spending a great time together. So this week is all about this topic. If you do not know who Richard is, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that, but kind of give you a quick synopsis. He's built a fan group with a bunch of his friends called the Five Deadly Venoms in New York City, which is a New York Excelsior fan group. Mm-hmm. If you've listened to High Noon Podcast as well, our friends will also have Richard on there in a couple days. So this week you're going to be double dipping if you listen to those two shows. Highly recommend you do it, because I'm sure that Blevins is going to have way more memes than I will to talk about all the fun, and has a lot more investment in the New York Excelsior scene to kind of talk a little bit about that, and also has done the same migration, I believe, to fanning for the Toronto Defiant, because he was really
he is in
Toronto
Buffalo
group.
So yeah. Buffalo and Toronto, we've got that thing where we see Bills football here in Toronto, so
right.
They're kind of like our cousins, I guess.
Yeah in
More
the good way.
snow though.
in the good way.
Yeah, in the good way.
Get enough snow to be called Canadian if you catch the drift,
exactly
or the snowdrift. Depends on what you got. In addition, the new fan club that he's kind of put together is called the Toronto Alpha Flight, and they've been working for the Toronto Defiant group of the Overwatch League, and we'll get into this more, but let me run through a couple things with you guys really quick, and that is a few more announcements. We have a new Patreon season that has just rolled over, so we're now in the month of June. So it's those of you who have gotten billed, I have messaged a few of you already, but some of the payments have been declined. I'm not sure if that's with cards or whatever, but just go double check your card, make sure your credit cards are all hunky-dory and everything's all non-declined. Maybe you just updated your credit card and forgot to update your Patreon account. That happened to me. I actually had to do that last month. So just go double check there. And again, we have our coaching sessions that we do on, if you're at the platinum level, $250 an episode or up, you can get access to that. We're working on scheduling for the next month, and as soon as Andres returns, we're going to start cranking out some more of those. So please let us know. We love to flex our muscles with our coaching. If you're requesting a tank coaching, I will ask that you formally request Andres, because I'm not as talented in that category, unless you're wanting specifically Winston coaching and specifically below diamond level, because I'm a little aggressive on my Winston. So in addition, we have our other sponsorships that we like to mention here, which is Top Score Solutions. Omnic Lab is presented in a large part by Top Score Solutions, because they are an esports-oriented community for business education, analytics, and developing businesses, services, organizations, or even just talking about content. Go check them out at topscoresolutions.com. Join their Discord. You can find a link on their website and talk to their community leads there. They have pretty much anything and everything, not just limited to Overwatch. Go talk to them there. Our friend Ben is great, and they also have their own podcast and kind of like a thing that they had Andres and I on a little while ago to talk about kind of creation in general and kind of even just building it up as you grow, which is one of the things that podcasters never really expect, to be honest. The last thing is we have Switch, which is a good friend of ours and also a good friend of yours. If you like statistics, he does the Omnic Meta website, and he's going to be cranking out some new stuff with the coming season of Stage 3 for Overwatch League kicking off soon. So let's get back to our guest. I had in the notes that we're gonna talk about a recap of the game night, and Andres wasn't there, but I will just say, in short, it was actually gigantic. Like, for whatever reason, every once in a while, one of these game nights just goes, like, flips to overdrive and everyone joins. Like, you go to general chat and it's just like, so and so has joined the server, so and so has joined the server, so and so has joined the server, and it's just like this wall of text for like the next 3 hours of just people joining, and it was fantastic. I heard from our PlayStation group that they went longer than normal, which is good to hear. And in our PC channel, we had 3 lobbies at one point going, which is over 36 players, and then we had around 30-ish players, probably pretty much for a good solid 4.5, 5 hours in the first 2 lobbies, and I was there running those with good friends. And we had a lot of new faces. Switch Fox, actually, from Omnic Meta, brought a good friend of his in bronze and had a great time. So always good to hear anyone and everyone that joins, regardless of their level. Root Bear, do you want to talk a little bit about game night and some of your first experiences there? Not necessarily this month, but just in general.
Oh, man. It's funny. The Omnic Lab game night was, one of those big tipping point moments for me when I realized how much fun you could have around Overwatch if you weren't really taking it so seriously on the comp ladder scene. I remember playing, and the mode, it went way too late. It was one of those big nights. I was still on console, and we were doing Moira Fade Slap. And it was the most bizarre mode when you just there was, I think, a 2-second cooldown on the fade, and all you could do was one-hit slaps. And I think I spent 20 minutes just basically like laughing and crying and trying to slap people in the game mode. And it was one of the most enjoyable moments I've ever had in Overwatch. And the great thing about it is you spend more time as you're going through that, just talking to people in the game. Like, that's the whole point. And it was a really, really wild thing. And it is wild because I actually popped in late last night. I forgot about the game night, and I saw how many people were there, and I was like, wow, I think I'll just get some work done instead, because there were a lot of lobbies going. I couldn't believe it, but yeah, honestly, it's an amazing experience, and anyone who is looking for something just new and enjoyable to do, like, I can imagine, like, with Workshop, going into full gear, it's going to get pretty crazy, some of the stuff you can do, because I'm sure you'll have a Workshop specific lobby one day, coming up once the modes settle in. But anyone who's thinking about, just wants to go out, I know the common thing to do is get into pugs. And, you often get in there and you got to wait, you go on the queue, and that's fine. But sometimes it's good to just go out and just have a ball with something that's just casual and primarily based around building, social capital. And that's what the Omnic Lab game night is all about.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be looking to expand it a bit more now that workshops are a thing. We're looking for new things. I did come across a couple fun ones with some Australian friends of mine that is similar to the 2-second fade slappers only for GoldenEye, basically slappers only Moira battles.
Oh, right on. Yep.
There's a game mode like that with Tracer and Genji. You can pick Tracer or Genji, and your dash does 0 damage, and you can only melee people. So
wow.
you can practice your, basically when you hit the melee button and blink on Tracer, there's a delay, but you can actually register the melee in both the beginning and the end of the blink if you do it properly. It's a kind of a high level.
That sounds terrible for me. I mean,
it's
that requires
really, really hard,
skill,
high level skill.
It requires
stuff.
aim. It requires timing. All the things that a Brigitte main like me can't do. But speaking of game modes, we are so the fellow. So it's a wild story. So when I was first getting kind of back into esports and back into gaming, I went to ESL in Brooklyn for the Counter-Strike to watch some Counter-Strike, and I had no idea how anything worked in the scene. And I saw that the ticket was like general admission. I didn't know what that meant at Barclays Center. So I'm on the subway, and this guy comes up to me, goes, and I ask him, I was like, hey, do you know how the ticketing and the seating works? And he goes, oh, is this your first time? And I'm like, yeah. And basically, this fellow, Raf, ended up basically letting me kind of hang out with him for the entire weekend and kind of showed me the ropes of how the scene worked. Flash forward a year, and he's rebuilt Quake Freeze Tag
Oh my
in
word.
Workshop. So it's all based off of single it's using Ash as the main.
Okay.
It's a timed shot, unlimited ammo, and you have to freeze the team, but he set it up so there's proximities to unfreeze. He's rebuilt the UI so you can keep track of the counts.
Yep.
And he now wants to host like a little mini sort of friendly tournament. So we're going to be doing that through the 5DV Twitch.
Nice.
And I'm trying to find a mix of like Overwatch streamers, but I want to find some old school Quake heads who just will come in and will just wreck everybody because the timing, because it's only just semi-auto shots, you cannot miss. And you have to know how to basically decide, are you going to keep killing, keep fragging, or are you going to unfreeze? So it'll be really wild. But once that gets settled, I'll share with you the mode. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Sounds good. All right. So let's talk about 5DV. That's a good end there. So we can talk about kind of who you are, what stuff you do. I gotta give you a little intro, but tell us about your fan club groups and kind of how you kind of started from the ground up, kind of in a more brief sense, because we want to transition over to the new stuff with Alpha Flight.
Of course. So 5DV started off as just a party of one trying to go and watch some Overwatch League games, not on a phone at home. So it was a group of folks that all met at Waypoint Cafe in New York. We met on day one of Overwatch League, and just through a series of really wild events, we got mentioned, a shout out by Puckett on day one, and we really kind of started with this group of like 4 folks, and eventually by the time 1 month went by, we were filling up Waypoint with 60, 70 people for watch parties, just to watch Excelsior. But then after that, we really expanded into really being more of a general meetup culture. So we would get together. You'll have meal nights out. There's a lot of people love getting hot pot. That's a pretty big thing. A lot of tabletop gaming, and then charitable outreach, which was really core to the group. It's that everyone who was doing this wanted to not just go and try to put on a big show. It wasn't about trying to be the biggest or the baddest. It was about doing something cool for New York. So then it became the heart, the charity and the Homefront initiative came out of that. Excelsior's been a huge partner with us on that, and it just kind of went from there. And it's been interesting because since those early days, there's something like eight or nine different, maybe 10 now, supporters clubs from all around the league that are all starting up, and it's all following that same model of being a community-led and organic fan base that is trying to express itself, in the world of Overwatch through the context of their home city and culture.
So when something like this starts, how are you going about this? Are you trying to do this by yourself and making personal connections? Are you friends with specific business owners and regional areas that are either friends or business partners, or how would you approach somebody to kind of open up their shop to do something like this that is either familiar with it or even completely non-familiar with it?
So it's an interesting
that seems
question.
like a really, really hard thing to do if somebody's not even opposed to it, but they're like, well, what is it? They kind of have to be a little chin in the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can only speak to my experience, and I like to think that in some ways my experience is probably it should characterize what would be the roughest experience, because I knew nobody in the scene. I knew none of the venues. I just basically had to walk in one day and convince somebody that, can I bring some folks into a venue? I promise I'll vet them enough that they won't burn the place down. But what it really comes down to is, I like to think it's probably not that important to base everything off of an incumbent connection. Insofar as, sometimes that can limit you in terms of where you think you may want to go or what you can do.
Yeah,
But what it really comes down to is finding a venue that fits the existing and general nature of the community that you're trying to pursue. So in New York, it was easy. I walked into Waypoint Cafe, and this place is effing perfect. It's there's a giant Tracer cutout, stand up right by the front door. A solid set of main gear rigs in the back, really friendly staff. They make amazing coffee, but then you could just see it wasn't just about Overwatch, and it just wasn't even just about game like PC gaming. It was basically Waypoint is like a shrine. It's like a shrine to all things nerdy and geeky. And you could tell that the people who went there were going there to, of course, hit the machines and play tabletop. But they were also socializing because you could see people talking to one another. So my
Right.
recommendation is take a look for venues that one, and this is my opinion of one, don't necessarily start at a bar. Um, Bars are designed to maximize alcohol consumption. And the thing that you need to develop a group is people who can remember their conversation the next day. So you find a place where the lights can be a little bit brighter, the sound can be loud enough, but the trick is to find a venue where they are willing to let you bring folks in. And I won't get into details of certificates of insurance and all that stuff. It will vary from city to city, state to state, and country to country. But if you can find a place where you can effectively act as a host, where you will just bring folks in and just ask them to help you find a space where you could potentially sit folks, where you can have a TV with some sound, and that there isn't a firm requirement for like a guarantee for sales turnover or a deposit, because the truth is it takes time to grow these things. I like to think that almost any venue that offers that type of environment is conducive to the development of a good group.
I would say, like, kind of like thinking about this from the other side too, and also attempting to play devil's advocate for why
Mhm.
things like this fail. I would say it's most likely because the venue itself or the people involved are not welcoming. So could you talk a little bit about kind of the community aspect to that? Because in New
Uh,
York,
yeah.
you have the entirety of a mixed bag. And I would even venture
Yeah.
to say that Toronto kind of has a similar thing, just in a different, different
Yeah.
shade, I guess you could say.
No, you're right. So the number one rule I have for any organizer who's entering the space is that you have to assume you'll most likely not actually see the game. Yeah, it's not any different from being a capo for like an MLS or soccer supporter club who leads the cheers. Your job is to make sure everything's working, greet folks at the door, remember names, and take care of the venue and people's experience. But most importantly, try to spur on conversation, because this is one of the few times that people have their time is precious. So it's really important to find a way to make sure that the time that people have invested to come out to your event um, has a longer term return for them. So talk to them, get to know them, figure out their interests. When you find more than one person who you realize they could really get along, introduce them. So the idea is you bring them all together. It's kind of like hosting a dinner party. Like if you and I were watching like the Japan series or something, right? And we host an event. We're probably not going to be watching much of the game. We're going to make sure that the snacks are stocked. They're going to make sure that everyone's comfortable. You want to sort of take care of the house. That is exactly what this is. And in some ways, and it might seem a little bit crazy, it's the exact opposite of what a lot of folks think esports events should be, because we see them almost like wrestling, right? I always said, when I first saw Counter-Strike, I'm like, I get it. This is like going to the WWE or NJPW. There's like a big entrance and there's loud
Right.
music and there's explosions. But in those cases, that's the requirement, right? And you can't do that every night. But what you really want to do is you've got to actually focus on the hosting aspect. And more often than not, you will find that most markets are willing to take, in some cases, you take a little bit of hit on the size of the screen or the sound or the volume of the sound system if the environment and the culture is good. And that is a lot of wrench time that you just have to put into, like I said, remembering names, faces, interests, and that has to be what you are interested in. And it's not any different from audience development on the corporate side. If you're a brand manager and you're trying to figure out how to do experiential events, you have to approach it that way too. Because no matter how big the sound is or how nice the show is, eventually that will wear out. There will always be fatigue. And the thing that's left behind is the community.
Now, to that end, I would like to talk about one more thing, which is all about getting the word out and making those connections to get people to the door rather than
Yep.
getting them to commit to the idea once they're there. Because
Yep.
I feel like Overwatch, if somebody likes the game and they like a team, they're already looking for something to participate in. So that's not even a prerequisite you have to worry about. But then getting them to understand where the door is and to commit from A to B as being worth it, right? From where they are to get to where you are, being worth it is a big one. And that's why a lot of people in, we're going to be talking about this probably later. Maybe we can even cover it now, which is the whole thing about creating hubs in North America in particular. Maybe even if you're an EU listener in the EU for teams that are not local to that region. A la Hangzhou and Guangzhou and Chengdu and Shanghai, as well as Seoul. If these people have fan groups and you're in, I don't know, Podunk, North Dakota, and you have like 5 fans there, but you guys are hard as core, but like you're not a local, you cannot get the parent company, the Hangzhou Spark, for example, to recognize you as an organization and to foot the bill and support you because you're not in that local city.
Yeah.
What do you do? You know what I mean?
So, so my one, the example I like to give here is in those in the 5DV videos, you'll often see these these two brothers, twins, Mark and Mike Padro, and what they actually head up a lot. They actually head up football supporters clubs. The Stateside Jacks, that is the Swansea supporters club in the U.S. And I've never met a pair of folks that have such incredible passion for a team that you can't understand why they have a connection to, right? Like they're so connected to a team that is in a foreign league, and it's not even a big team in many ways. But this is why I said it's that's that cultural aspect. So
yeah, exactly.
So going back to your original question, getting the word out. That's just how you start it. So things that people miss when they work these events is that, when you ask someone to come to an event, everyone's bombarded with messages. There is a continuous onslaught of people doing invites. So the few things that I've done, it's pretty funny. So one, I never use Facebook because I just find Facebook to be not that effective. And it's also annoying. But realistically, let's be honest, this is a culture where a lot of us live under pseudonyms. Why would you ever make somebody use a platform that forces people to actually give up personal information? It's just a little bit weird, right? But this it's a lot of, I guess you could say it's really akin to like direct marketing and just actually giving a hoot about it. Discord is always the largest driver of traffic. It was the largest driver in New York, and it is the largest driver here in the city. For NYXL, in the early days, I remember someone had commented when I was posting about the events. They said someone had commented that they felt like I was spamming, so I asked the mods to create a local meetup channel for just local folks in New York. That is now a standard on every Overwatch League server. Because I was like, yeah, you're right. We should actually, if localization is going to be a thing, there should be a section for people who are actually in the city or in other interested local areas. So if I was doing something like Toronto, if I was,
you have that
like
Buffalo
if I was,
group.
yeah, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, I would probably get something for KW because you've got Waterloo and Laurier there, the two universities. So, but the idea is, you have to actually get to know folks because they, like it's like anything else. Do you really want to go to someone's house if you've never met them? Like it'd be kind of weird. Like, come to my place, we're gonna have a lot of fun. It's a little bit strange, but through the beauty of Discord is you can easily just get to know folks, and then you actually present the event. Twitter is huge because it's very easily shareable. And then my real recommendation is, as you do your invites, use a formal system. So whether it's like using like meetup.com or Eventbrite, use some kind of structured system so that you can actually properly track invites over time. Because again, it's one, it helps you with people's names because you check folks in. But two, it helps you understand realistically like who's coming, who came and then stopped coming, and then you can have honest discussions about like what was it, and then you figure out like why someone might not come out, why they might fatigue out of events. Sometimes it's just work schedules. Things happen in life, but by structuring it around a hub of, in my opinion, Discord, you make your life a lot easier, and then you have the added benefit of actually bringing folks into a real world space from the digital so that they can, talk like regular folks And then they get to go back to the convenience of digital, and you're giving them both worlds.
Right.
And it's by being that conduit to the two worlds that everything will work out a lot better.
Yeah. And to speak a little bit to that as well, I think that the most difficult thing is not even just getting the things organized and getting them
Yep.
set. It's the consistency of continually doing it week in, week out, and especially making sure that people remember to stay invested after an off season.
So that's where the wrench time comes in.
Yeah.
I have not. So the first rule I give to folks for this is you have to host for every game, regardless of what you think the turnout will be.
Exactly.
You need to create a totem of consistency. I have sat through. Okay, so the very first 5DV meetup, we had 12 people. The second day, we had 4. There were just 4 of us around one table.
Yep.
It was like a Thursday to a Saturday or something. Toronto, we've had top line like maybe 50 people, and then one quiet. I can tell you one thing that sucks in Toronto is Sunday afternoons in Toronto when the Toronto Overwatch Beer League is running. It's going to be a quiet day because people will actually go from the front of the venue to the back of the venue to watch the Beer League games play because they're all streamed and broadcast. So that doesn't but you always have to host it. And then you set very firm rules. So in some cases, like I always tell folks, I would never host events that start after 10 p.m. It's pretty late, especially if it's a weekday. But you have to go every single game, and then you have to put a little bit of love into it. Waypoint was amazing, right? In the sense that the venue has so much heart and soul that it carries itself.
Right.
Currently, the Toronto Alpha Flight meetups are at a venue called the Hive in Toronto, and it's more of a generalized atmosphere. So I have to dress the heck out of it, like that's why, the thing we've Toronto does a lot is we have a lot of artists. So I've commissioned a ton of art to create a lot of posters and signs. I've purchased flags to dress it up a little bit and give it some character. So that way, when the event is hitting, that when our event is running, it because the moment you walk in, you'll see the signs at the front, you'll see the flags. There'll likely be an air raid siren somewhere in the venue because that's just what we do when they win. But you do have to really make sure that you are there every time. And the truth is, once you've committed to that event, you can't cancel, no matter how small the turnout may be.
Now, when you have something like this, because you're in the unique opportunity where when you were in the off season for 5DV, and then you get the phone call, Toronto's got an Overwatch League team.
Yep.
You've got just you're not even shifting into 5th gear from 4th. You're going all the way down to stalling and holding out and trying to figure out, is this something that I can do, and can I move that quickly to get this set? You know what I mean? And then furthermore, once you're now in Toronto, this is something that is like, okay, I'm in it for the long haul. So now when you fast forward past the the finals of Overwatch League Season 2, on the dawn of Season 3 in the off season, you now have a unique opportunity with a group of artists that you actually have a completely different skill set that you can work with to build your off season around this art, which is really, really cool because you can just start running art events and just theming them. And it doesn't like do itself. Like there's no thing in creating events that does itself because you have to do it.
No, absolutely. I really want to have a gallery show in Toronto. My dream is to host a gallery show where we can showcase the creatives here, and I don't know, there's a group of folks here, fashion designers, Pink City, who do incredible work, and they've done some similar work in the space, and they're some of the most collaborative and positive souls that I've met. And the idea is we would come together, we would find some of the artists who do work, and then you set up like a gallery so there's things on the walls, and then the folks who make the small collectibles, you can have them there with tables. It's like almost like a mini con and an exhibition.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to do, though, as I said, let's again merge the worlds, the digital and the tangible. So folks who are digital artists, look, if you're an emote artist, that's awesome. You should come. You should make this a commission drive. Why not? Because everyone is living. Like here's an example, right? Everybody is like, you're an emote artist, so you make a tweet and you need everyone to retweet it. But there's like a sea of emote artists, right? But the truth is, a lot of folks are in need, but they never see that message because of time, because of network, whatever it is. But one of the things that always drives business and economic development in any city, right, is small business hubs and localized areas. You have to have a main street. We've all gone through, I know towns that have struggled, a lot because the main street gets, sort of broken down, right? Because they build giant, like, Walmarts on the outside of the periphery of the city.
Right.
Traffic moves, but then all of a sudden, before you know it, there's no hub anymore. So why wouldn't a digital artist promote and be present at an IRL art gallery show? They're an artist just like anybody else, right? And by connecting them to other folks who might have a little bit more experience in that type of setting, that's where the beauty comes in, because people start to build things together, and you learn through exchange of ideas, and then all sorts of crazy stuff happens that nobody could have predicted.
So let's kind of fuse this question together. We have a couple things that I wanted to hit that that we
All right.
talked about in the pre-show or had written in our pre-show notes, which is barriers to creating these groups, which I'll also like to expand into what is unique about the two groups that you've established. We touched on some things about that already, but what is it about that uniqueness that other groups aren't doing, or people that aren't doing well enough to get beyond the hump, as it will?
Okay, so obstacles. The raison d'être, like your reason for being, has to be very clear. The goal should never be to be noticed by the team to work for them, ever. I know I've seen a couple things come by, come and go, where I found out later. I was always wondering why they were, doing things in a certain way, and you give advice, but the goal was that you would be hired as the audience development team or something, right? The truth is, this has to be something you'd be doing regardless of whether or not you were ever to be seen. I always say it's very much like martial arts, right? You train because you're trying to improve your mind, right? You don't care if anyone knows. You're doing it for you, for yourself, for internal growth. So a big obstacle has to be that you need to have a very clear understanding of what it is that you want to do, and try not to make it too based, I guess, on this idea of like reciprocity in the long term, that you are hoping to come in. It's sort of like when you have tech startups that have a business model of saying our business model is to be bought out, right? It's a little bit strange, and that goes into the second piece, which is that it requires a little bit of capital, but not a lot. But don't be afraid to spend a little bit to make something good. So, the missus has been extremely patient with me because I've probably invested way too much in logo designs, brand books. I've worked with some pretty good designers that I know from the ad agency world to really come up with a lot of the style guides that we use. But the difference between drawing something yourself or spending $50, $80, $100 that you pool with 5 people to make one really nice logo.
It definitely scales.
Exactly. It opens a world of opportunity in that you can then go to a dye sub manufacturer, right? And they can help you build a flag or a jersey or a jacket or whatever it is, right? And all it takes is that little seed. So you've just got to get through that. And then the third piece is finding folks. Nobody can really do it alone. I don't think I think there's no such thing as a self-made man or person, I should say, in that everything exists because somebody gave somebody a chance. Like even when you sell something, they're giving you that authority, right, to buy
venture
into an
capitalists
idea.
exist.
Yeah, right. But the idea is you need to find folks who would otherwise hang out anyway and could have a good conversation. Again, if people are there and it's too purposive, it wouldn't work. It won't work so well. And then the last piece is you've got to just be persistent. I think I put that in my World Cup campaign. The trait I like most is persistence. You just got to stick with it. I've been through a lot of cultural trend, growths. Like I went through the rave scene as a DJ. I've been through social tech and social media in 2010. Now I went through the data analytics boom
You've
in
been
ad
through
agencies.
reverse culture
I've-
shock more than culture shock.
Yeah, I've gone through anime being a thing to not being a thing to becoming a weird thing.
You're not wrong.
And then yeah, I've been practicing my kawaii laugh too. I've been telling
Oh,
folks if
yeah,
I
there
make
you
it to
go.
the World Cup, I'm gonna I'm gonna kawaii laugh and eat a bowl of Vita ramen.
That's great.
But
I've been practicing my
no.
Frieza laughs.
So but it's that you have to, in the end, you have to be persistent, because there's going to be times when look, you might put in some money for a shirt and you'll sell one, if any, and maybe none, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
that's okay. That is okay. The number of folks who have succeeded in spaces where they themselves have been the ones who've had to like pull up the ideas and save the pennies.
Mhm.
Well, we don't have pennies in Canada. We start at nickels, but it's little things like that. Like that is actually pretty uncommon. A lot of folks will get a line of credit, big thing, but don't treat it like that, right? Don't try to expand too much. Don't try to make it too big. Take it step by step and be persistent, and just have a really outline. And I tell every prospective supporters group this: write out your idea. You have to write it out. You have to have the same thing that you would do in traditional marketing: mission, vision, and values. You have to outline those precepts somewhere, because those will be your guiding. Those will be your the North Star for you as you go and you make your decisions as to, should we do this? Ought we ought or ought not, right? You have to have something there. A great example is I saw the Washington, the DC supporters group, Washington Vice and Virtue. Just they recently rebranded. But if you speak to their founder, Tina Roebuck, or you read how she describes the group, man, it is crystal clear what that group is about and what they stand for and what they want to do, and their take on audience development, management, community, and charity. Like, you can see where it's going to go, and it has to be like that for for it to work, because again, the gaming and the games are the context, right? They're the context for which people are meeting. The content, it's the people.
Right. I would even venture to say that if you guys want to kind of deconstruct this down to some simple terms, not necessarily like making this reductionistic, because I do think that there is value in all of the details, because the devil's in the details, and that's where things die.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But when you're doing something like this and you're creating, the importance of the vision lies within making something that is organized, specific, so that people can get behind it, and then you can rally behind that banner. Because if you're not rallying behind a banner that is simple by nature but complicated in outcome, or I guess you could say in outworking, then you're not really going to keep maneuvering. It's very much, it feels very business-y, like if you look at it from a service point of view. But I think too many people in creating fan groups look too much on the product side for whatever reason.
Yes.
And it doesn't even make logical sense, but I can see how people's brains process to get there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I think that we
absolutely.
did that with OmnicLab, because it's like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, then we need to have merch. Okay, well, we need to do a good job on this. We need to have this person on, or we need to do this to be recognized, to be successful. And that's frankly not true. The only thing that we need is something to talk about and people to listen. Like, if you boil it down, that's what a podcast is, and everything else is gravy. Does having merchandise and a venue for what you're doing help validate you? Maybe to some people, but not to everyone.
Correct. Exactly.
Do you even have to sell a shirt? No.
No.
But it does help having it there. You know what I mean?
Yes, and the idea was, I mean, my reasoning to get things going here in Toronto was, like, look, I won't lie, like, not for nothing, one of the reasons why designing our own kits and our gear is important is because the Fnatic shop fundamentally fails Canadian consumers. Even with the international shop, it's still a bit of a mess.
Tell me
for
about
us.
It. Tell me about it.
So I mean, yeah, holy cats! I mean, you're in Japan. Oh, okay,
I looked at the Fnatic shop and closed it. It's like,
how much was the shipping for you? I need to know.
Oh God, I don't even
It
know.
must
I
have been
think
like
I think
50
it
it must have
actually
been like
scaled if you got a more
$70.
custom comment, like a custom one.
Yeah,
It was more
it was
expensive.
just nuts, right? But the idea is, you're right. In the end, what you're trying to do is you've got to build the groups around the people that are there. I couldn't build 5DV here in Toronto. It's not possible. Toronto has a fundamentally different population base and interest base. As such, you have to use, I mean, these groups are an expression. It's an outcome of community bonds and social capital. It's like a reflection of it, right? So to take a model, um, this is where I tell, and you can see this happening a little bit in kind of around the league a little bit, where it's a team-driven or corporate-driven initiative.
Hmm.
You cannot take a group model you can't take the culture and apply it to all the different regions. You want to tell somebody in Toronto that they're the same as someone in Hamilton, or that they're the same as somebody in Sault Ste. Marie, or that they're the same as someone as in Sudbury or Barrie, right? Or St. Catharines. You're
Even
crazy.
people north side and south side Chicago would slit each
That's
other's
what I'm
throats.
saying.
You know, the subculture
Exactly.
is unreal.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. And so I saw what you have to get is, and this is my free advice for any team that will take will take it. The model isn't built off of selling the value of the team. The models have to be built off of understanding a relevant way to create a context for people who have a general interest in what you do, but let them express it in their way. And that is hard. It is the fundamental obstacle for a traditional brand manager trying to extend a line into a new category. There's a reason why ad agencies do this really well in some cases, or PR groups or comms groups, because it's not just saying like I can't just a good example like we love dill pickled chips here in Canada and we love ketchup chips.
Oh my
I can't
God,
just
I
take
love
ketchup chips,
chips.
but
I
I can't
had them
just
in
take ketchup
Wisconsin.
chips.
They were so good.
Oh yeah, well, Hares makes a brand. They make like a Heinz flavored ketchup chip, which is the one you get in the US a lot. But you can't just take it and make it work. Like I love root beer. Canadians love root beer, but you can't just bring a product out and say like it's great, you're gonna like it too. No, this is why formulations change. McDonald's in Japan is so different, right, than than the
It's
US.
not a
Like
grease pit here, but it does
it's
have that if you want it.
it does it. Well, you remember like the family. It's different now, but do you remember when like family size nuggets were like 10 pieces because they don't eat very much
They
meat,
have a
right?
they have a summer thing right now where you can get a pack of like 30.
Oh,
It's
yeah. Well,
really
they
sweet.
also did, but they love the whole like mega fries thing though too in Japan, where it's like uh, they love
Yep.
fries.
They do.
But like that's what I tell people. The supply chain and the system of delivery, standard operating procedures. That is the model that McDonald's will bring to all the countries it goes to. But you have to leave the marketing and the comms to, and the ideas for how people connect to the people in those areas. KFC, when they launched in Hong Kong, originally completely failed. And when they went back, it's a famous business case. When they went back, the deal was a lot of the local folks there said, we need to be able to drive our own marketing. We can't take it from global and we can't take it from America. You have to let us do this our way.
Let me even interject here because KFC redefined what subculture they had when they came to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And not many people know this, but I had mentioned it on the show kind of in passing. But if you know anything about Christmas time in Japan, it's not as big in Asia in general as New Year's because it's all tied to the ancient practice from the Chinese New Year and the Lunar Festival and all that jazz.
Yes.
When it hits is all different based off of which region of Asia you're in. But in Japan, Christmas is still commercialized well, but not necessarily for anything besides children and romantics. But what KFC has done is they said, it's Christmas time and everyone wants chicken on Christmas.
Chicken on Christmas. Yes.
Is that true? No, but it is in Japan because they said so and they marketed it as such for so long that people actually believe it.
So in Hong Kong, you go to KFC for breakfast.
There you go.
That's all I'm saying. You go to KFC for breakfast. Because apparently you eat a fried chicken cutlet, right, for breakfast.
I mean, it
But
exists
actually, a
in
lot
the
of it-
South and South. Sorry, south area of America and like Georgia. That's how chicken and
Yeah.
waffles came about.
I know, and what we also do is, but you'll see, KFC also does the traditional like the noodles with chicken soup and like a grilled chicken piece on top. It's a
Sure.
traditional Hong Kong breakfast.
Yeah.
McDonald's does it too.
Hmm.
That is the model, and the mistake people will make, and you can see it, is that because esports is somewhere in between traditional sports and traditional entertainment, right? Like film and
You have to
television. It's
find
kind of in between, right?
that in
You
between.
can't take either model. And look, again, people are going to be like, well, who the hell is this guy to tell us how to do our jobs? And I'm like, okay, look, I'm just,
The
and
peanut
it's true.
gallery.
I'm just some guy in a small apartment right now with a weird Brigitte poster in the back. But I can tell you, hey, look, in the end, um, the weakness of the model in esports, and why there's such a huge opportunity for community groups, and why I think a lot of changes can, like really great and positive change can be made in the space, is because it's defined right now on a one-way consumptive model. You only watch it the way they want you to watch it. You use the programs that they give you. The licenses are controlled. The leagues are much more like, there's not a lot of variance in how you can participate with it,
It's pretty
right?
loose.
So it's so what's interesting is, uh, you can't, like, think about it. You express yourself by buying a skin. Okay, how else can you do it? Well, I don't know, right? That's the problem, right? Because, and then they'll be like, well, let's just do, and then you go to the other side. You'll be like, well, we'll do what traditional sports folks do, and then it's like, what do we need with a Toronto Defiant beer cozy? Right? From the Fanatics store. Like, I made a joke when Fanatics got the deal. I was like, I wonder how long it's going to take for us to get the beer cozy. And it was the second run. But the idea is you need to find a balance in between. But what that really means is you have to listen to the audience. You have to listen to what people are saying and then infer what that can mean for experience. And then you can start that out with these small organic meetings, and then you can expand it. It's a huge asset for a lot of teams to at least have a healthy relationship with their supporters, much like soccer, where that's your balanced feedback. You never want to listen to the mass feedback, because everyone, if you do that, you're going to get the homer car, when it's like you have the big bubble dome and it's the cucaracha horn, because it's got every feature that everybody says they want. But then you have to rationalize that through the audience and then figure out, okay, well, maybe we can try little things, and then it reduces risk. And you get great feedback because it's coming from, in the end, the people who are most dedicated to, in the end, not just watching the team, but forming a community of fans that will eventually grow up to become season ticket holders. They'll be the people who encourage their companies to get a corporate box at the arena. And when you bring that all together, good things will happen.
All right, so let's wrap up this whole thing with just saying at the very end, how will we encourage new people or even existing smaller groups to keep going and or start out? What is kind of like, if we have to boil it down to like one, two statements or one, two little things that they can do. We've given them a lot of things that kind of across the board, but we want to hit on the things that would be the most valuable to them right now.
So the first thing is reach out to groups. Don't think that there's not enough room for more than one group in the space. Soccer is defined by multiple supporters groups for one team. Toronto has Toronto FC. I think they have something like 8 supporters groups. That's normal. Don't try to own everything. Reach out and partner and ask for help. We have a league supporters association that I've started up. So I've brought together all the community-driven supporters clubs. We have our own Discord, and we share all of our ideas, because you're better off doing that than by trying to say you own everything or you want to be the person doing it. Don't be selfish. Be smart. Atlanta has 3 groups. I think it's the craziest thing, but it makes sense because Atlanta's gigantic, right? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is really, again, you've got to be patient, and never realize that the core requirement for you isn't to put on a big show.
To
The
put
core
on a
requirement,
show.
exactly, it's to put on a show, and that is exactly it. Don't worry about big and fancy and nice So someone once said, they're like, I want something to be, we want it to be like 5D Viva for here. I'm like, okay, just so you know, when we started, it was one person who made a Google Sheet roll call and just went on Discord, and we randomly met at Konji Village, in the Lower East Side before then, and then we kind of had to figure out who everyone else was. But it was basically the locals in the Discord going. So you've got to set it up like that. It is put on a show. Don't worry about it being big. That will come later if it's appropriate. But focus on making sure you get one thing done well.
And buy into the
At a
vision
time.
with a group. You gotta.
Yes.
Everyone's got to buy in. Whether that be the listeners or the people that are participating is kind of up to them. But you want to
Yep.
get people that are running it with you that also
Yes.
buy into the same vision, because once you have something established, you can kind of work together. That's how mods get developed in Discords, and people get
Absolutely.
kind of buy-in into even the simple stuff like our Discord. Is like, well, people bought in. They're here to the vision. They understand when we make a call that may not be something that they even like, but that's what we bought into it, so we're going to do it.
Exactly.
All right. Team Canada 2019. Let's talk about it.
So, when I was in the States and I was doing the 5DV stuff and the World Cup came around, I couldn't. I knew I couldn't apply for, obviously, a Team USA role. That makes no sense. I'm not
Right.
American.
Yeah.
But I couldn't realistically even attempt to run for Canada because I didn't know anything about the scene. Flash forward one year, and I finally had that opportunity. So I wrote out, I put together an application for the endorsement stage, and I had no idea what was going to happen. Look, the truth is, the scene here's, I'm still a total noob here. And then I managed to make the shortlist. So with that, I'm hoping, in this run, I'm trying to outline a slightly different way of doing things. And look, I'm pretty crappy with Adobe Premiere on my desktop. I'm not much of a memer. So I did, I guess you could say, the kind of opposite thing. And I just created a full platform for what I think Overwatch community leadership can be versus what it is, because I think that there's actually some fundamental shortcomings to the way we set things up for ourselves in the world of esports, because we're basing it only off of the things that we've seen within the category, within the space. And I think there's a ton of opportunity to make this much bigger and actually much more sustainable and beneficial for people in the community.
For sure. And I will say that if you guys are looking for somebody to help you out with kind of the community leadership, I don't know, what else do you want? Like, what Rich is trying to do here is not something that hasn't been done before. It's something that he wants to do for Canada specifically. Like, the things that he's done in America and in Canada, he's kind of like hybridizing these things to kind of bring to the table not any form of like political platform, as you will, but like it's kind of just like we want to make sure that if you're voting on something and you want it to count for something, it's not that voting for other community leads is going to get you something that you haven't I wouldn't say that has a whole lot of control, because it is Blizzard we're talking about here. Okay, but
absolutely,
the thing that you will see is that there are a lot of qualified people just trying to get in, and we're now at the shortlist time, and so this is where the votes count even more. And if you want to get,
it's a runoff.
Yeah, if you want to get Richard in here, you got to go vote for Great Root Bear on the website, and you have to do it again. It didn't like you can get to the people to the shortlist, and then once they get there, you have to do it again. So if you haven't done that, or you have done it in the past, you got to do it again. So this is more or less a reminder to do it again. And especially those of you in Canada, because I've already voted, but I can't vote for Richard. I can have him on the show, but I can't vote for him. My votes still only count for the U.S. So
and truth be told, if you want to vote for someone else, you absolutely should. Absolutely. I can only speak to my own idea, but I think that, look, it's one of those cases where I believe that the way community lead is designed, right? It's sort of like what I said to not do. It's about putting on a show, right? People will get costumes. They'll go out and said, look, and we can do that. But I think there's a bigger idea, and I think what we're talking about is if you change the term community lead to head of communications, right? All of a sudden, it changes the way we can think about this, because we're talking about ways to talk about the story of our national Overwatch program. It's a much bigger idea that I think that is obfuscated by the legacy of what we understand as the touch points for esports, which is streaming and memeing, right? So that's why I said, like, my first plan is, I said, I think you actually have to be a creative team of teams. I don't think it should be about the lead being the center of attention. I think the lead has to be comfortable occasionally having to handle a call or being that center of attention, but it's about rallying the best community talents in the country. I mean, if I were to get the role, the first thing I'd do is reach out to prominent streamers in the country.
Other community
I
league
have to,
offered.
yeah, I absolutely have to speak to somebody who's bilingual because my French is terrible. And then you find those creators and you become a content and comms team. So, a good example is the first two folks that I probably reach out to are out on the West Coast. They'd be the Rain City Runners and Ready Set Pawn, the Titans podcast, and the Titans Supporters Club, because this is a national program. And who better to start talking to than people who are trying to organize events and also communicate and talk about ideas in the world of Overwatch that love our local teams, but they're in a completely different part of the country, right? Secondly, it's that I think the work can become a little bit more sophisticated in that it's not to say that the work and the actual quality of work isn't strong. It's that the work that's done in esports, and I see this because I'm industry side, I'm in PR comms and ad agencies all the time, right? The creative that's being done in esports is no different than things that traditional ad agencies or film houses have done. We just think it's different because we call it esports, but it's not. The same way that social media was no different, and social media communities were no different than real communities. When you take out switching costs, everyone's going to be a jerk because they can, right? They can run away. So one of the things I've been saying was, I know there's requirements around sponsoring the team. So this is one of those times when I went to agencies that I know, and I asked them if they'd be willing to sponsor me to help be guidance and help support with content creation that would otherwise be limited due to, again, capital or timing. So I've got two agencies. One is Citizen Relations, that's my day job, who is willing to sponsor and effectively be almost like a sponsored agency of record for media relations, PR, and comms. And the second is a group called Lucky Numbers, who are a creative shop, so photographers, videographers, website builders, and they're willing to sponsor to help build things. Because what they can do is they can get access to people who are shooters to get content together for people who aren't all in one spot at once. So here's an example. Some people will say, well, how do you make content? Because none of the players are in the same place at the same time. And I tell everybody, guys, that's an old problem that's already been solved. How many times do you see the Raptors, the Toronto Raptors, being interviewed all as one group? Right? Not very often. So what you do need is you need to understand that there's an infrastructure to how to build this content, not just the technical You know what it is? It's the strat, not just the mech, the mechanical skill. You got to have the strat. There are strats to figure out how to get content, like get people filming people on site. There's so many ways you can do this, right? One of my favorites was the women's national soccer team in the US. They had this great content program that they showed before the World Cup, which was just the players on their own time going in front of basically what was like a photo booth and talking to the camera. And then they cut those into the story. So there's ways to do this, right? And then that goes in the third piece, which is that, and it's what we talked about. Community leadership isn't about who memes the best, who makes the best content, who just can slay it on Adobe Premiere. These communities have to exist in real life. In the end, the World Cup is going to happen on a LAN in LA. So you've got to develop these community means through digital and IRL means. So that's really, really critical. And then, like we've talked about, you got to bridge old and new school stuff, right? There's definitely some knowledge that you've got to create programming that has to work across the board. Because we're not just talking about, trying to put on like a show for one group. Whenever you deal with a national sports program, there's a huge amount of tastes you have to appeal to. And it's not just provincial taste, it's age gaps, it's everything. And you've got to really bridge in this sort of broad-based thinking, because in the end, we actually have to build all of this for the future. It's not about making a big splash right now. It's about creating architecture and infrastructure and mentoring people in these like old school skills that like, an old guy like me picked up because I got my butt kicked in professional jobs for 8 years before I had 8 years of, minor success. I don't want to talk big about myself, but like half of your career basically sucks when you come into, ad agencies. But that's the knowledge that should be imbued upon the people on the team. Because when you bring all those things together, now what you're doing is it extends beyond the World Cup. It extends beyond Overwatch. This is about how we actually properly fuse without any of the glitz and glamour and oversell that you might hear in the market, or some random report that tells you you're going to make $1 billion in this industry. And you can take folks who would otherwise be almost taken advantage of or be a little bit naive when they approach this industry, and give them and arm them with skills that can help them both in an esports targeted career, an Overwatch targeted career, or anything within the creative comms and branding space.
So with our Team Canada community lead pushing for this, if you guys are in Canada and you can vote, please look at Richard as a prime candidacy for what you want in a organizational structure, as well as somebody that can help make the connections for Team Canada, as well as document it with these video resources that he has at his disposal, whether they're sponsors or people. The whole goal is making it so that Toronto has a big push coming in to Overwatch League, as well as the Team Canada having good representation for its players and its staff members. And I would even say that, knowing Rich for a long time, for a couple years, that I would even venture to say you probably see a lot more faces that you wouldn't realize are behind the scenes helping out. And you'll also see a lot of the faces of Overwatch, your Surefours, your XQCs, because, you know, they're good friends. They're all Canadian. So.
I mean, I think it's funny because you've known me since I was a Zenyatta main on PS4. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Because I could see the orbs, I could see the projectiles. That's the only reason I used
colorblind mode wasn't even in the game.
No. I actually have some of my old clips saved from my PS4 games with back when I was queuing a lot with Rain and Biggs. And my friend watched one clip of me as Orisa. She goes, "What are you doing with your shooting?" I'm like, I couldn't see anything. I had no idea what was happening in the game.
Try coaching when somebody says they can't see. Like, that's an experience in and of itself.
Yeah. And sorry, Lightforce, I see you in the chat. Yeah, thank you so much for the support you give me out of Ready Set Pawn. That means a lot to me. I think standing. Look, we're standing as one. I mean, that's what this all comes down to. And that's been so I really appreciate that, man. Thank you.
So do you have any final words for those of you that are voting? Kind of like to put it in a nutshell.
In the end, what's most important is go out and, one of the only freedoms we have in life is the freedom to choose. Don't give up that freedom. Whether it's to vote for me or anyone else, just get on there and vote, and let's show everybody what Canada and what the World Cup can be, what we think it can be for us to become something much bigger than what it might have been in the past. And just go use that freedom and just go and read up on the folks. Don't just do it reactionary. If there's something that you like in what I've said, I will gladly accept your vote. But if there's something that you like about what someone else has said, definitely vote for them. The most important thing is go out and act, because we want to make this a very special year, because this is going to be the launch point to head into our home seasons. And it's very important to make sure that the World Cup can have a little bit of that flavor of what that can be for all of us.
And the next best thing is beating Team Korea. Am I right? So let's get out there and beat Korea.
Yes.
Doesn't matter who it is. I will be rooting for them.
Yeah.
All right. We have a few more people to thank before we close out the show here, Richard. So I'm going to take the mic for a bit. Here we have our diamond sponsorship roles over at Top Score Solutions. We have Bunk Plays. We have Meow. We have Shazir in the chat also giving us 1,000 bits early on in the show. Thanks so much for Shazir there. You can support us on twitch.tv/Omnic Lab on our affiliate program. We do accept all of the things there because we have access to getting bits as well as subs from Amazon Prime. In addition, we also have Shepard, Crimson Fail, Roger B, Krista Play, and Tragic Zach as our top level sponsorship roles. And Bunk Plays is brand new to that, so thank you so much for that. You might be wondering, some of you on the Diamond sponsorship role, why you're not there anymore. It's because of the decline thing that I said at the top of the show. So if you want to be back on it, you go check it out and see what's going on with your card. Maybe Patreon has an error, and you'll probably just be back on it next week, but we'll see you there. Also, welcome to the brand new patrons on the kind of the regular everyday supporter roles. These guys are some of the heavy lifters as well that that help us out. We have one of the greatest names on this list. We have Tonka Truck with 3 Ks, which is great, and William W. Thank you guys so much for joining on the Lab Rat crew. You are also at the same level of 250, so you guys can qualify for the coaching levels, and so head us up there if you want to get some coaching. And last up we have is our reminder that we are on Spotify. We're on Spotify, guys. Go check it out. If you have a Spotify Premium, you can listen to us anytime you'd like. You can share it with your friends. We have a link in there for you. So support us at patreon.com/OmnicLab for monetarily, or you can hit us up on Twitch. And you can find me and Richard or Great Root Bear in our Discord anytime. You can ping us, and we'll try to respond as best we can on our own timetables, of course. And Andres, be sure to give him a big warm welcome when he comes back. Tell him that Atlanta sucks or something. I don't know. That'll get his attention. But yeah, we're looking forward to the next set of Stage 3 in Overwatch League Season 2. And we hope to see you guys on the voting, and also Richard to be on the winning side for the next World Cup.
We find out actually everything ends June 7th when Toronto Defiant hits the ground again for the first game of the stage. So
okay, so get those votes
good luck there. Get those votes in. It's the last week. It's the last push. And I will end with this. Everyone always wonders about the name Great Root Bear, and I'll just say this: any man who has an A&W Root Bear that is this big in their house clearly has very strange relationships with fandom, which means I'm definitely a good candidate for you.
All right, folks. I think that's going to do it for the show this week. There will be more to come in the future of June, and looking forward to have Andres back on the thing. Great Root Bear, where can people find you on the internets if they need to look for you outside of Discord?
You can find me at Twitter, on Twitter at Great Root Bear. You can find me on Twitch at Great Root Bear. And you can find me on Instagram at Great Root Bear. Apparently wasn't a popular name, so I was able to get it everywhere. Keeps life easy.
You can also find the fan groups that he has helped to build and also currently participating in at NYXL_Venoms, VENOMS, as well as Alpha Flight _TO. You can also find them if you just Google search Alpha Flight or Google search Venoms, like and Nexel Venoms, you'll probably find them. But I put them in the show notes for you if you'd like them. And remember that game night has not just finished for May, but it is starting in June on the 28th. The last Friday of every month is always game night, and we hope to see you there for a nice summer sesh. And remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We'll see you guys next week. Adios, and sayonara from Japan. Bye, guys.